great to be back. Like Pastor Mike said, I was here, I think 3 or 4 years ago on a Wednesday evening, so I met a few of you then. But anyway, my name is Eric Chabot, and I am from Columbus, Ohio. Go Bucks. Anyway, so I know you have a branch here in Lima, so it's good to be here. I always appreciate coming to Pastor Mike's church. I'm not sure how we got acquainted, but we have a kindred spirit with apologetics, so we like to help Christians apologize for being Christians. It's a good thing, right? Go around and say, what's that word mean, apologetics? You're like, does it mean apologize for being a Christian? So, no, but anyway, so I thought what we would do today, obviously we're going to do a little bit about what we do with apologetics and outreach. I'm going to tie some things in with some of my experiences at Ohio State. Just a little bit about myself. I am based in Columbus. I've been there all my life. I mean, I've gone to school elsewhere, but I am a native of Columbus. I live in the northeast side with my wife, Lucy, my 2 kids, Elise and Jack. And so I've been doing ministry at the Ohio State University since 2004. And you got a little pamphlet about me, kind of handed out. You know, some of you got it there. It's a little bit about myself, an older picture. I had a few more hairs there back in a long time ago. But we do have a specialty in reaching Jewish people for the gospel with CJF Ministries, but I do direct the Apologetics chapter of the Ratio Christi Ministry at the Ohio State. Pastor Mike actually has a couple, I'm going to grab one of these, has some of these on your back table, a little bit about Ratio Christi in the back, a little bit about that ministry. But anyway, so we decided when I was going to do ministry at Ohio State, and I've been there for a number of years, we came to realize, of course, the university being so large that it was at 60,000 students, that, there's a lot of Christians that come on the campus, they really were getting swept away, on the campus in their faith. They were hearing a lot of objections to the faith they've been raised in. And so, I decided after doing evangelism for a while and doing some other things that we needed to have a stronger focus on the campus on apologetics. Of course, apologetics is really just giving reasons for why you believe what you believe. And if someone said to you, why are you a Christian? Why do you think this is true? Why do you follow Jesus? You can hopefully articulate that to somebody out there. It's so important. It's biblical. It's in the scriptures. I'm not going to go through every passage in the Bible that teaches apologetics. If you just read through the book of Acts, just read the early sermons by Peter and Paul and others. They all implemented apologetics into their sermons. They talked about how Jesus fulfilled messianic prophecy. They preached the resurrection. One of the most common texts we use with apologetics is 1 Peter 3:15. I'm going to get used to pointing this here. I think I have to go the arrow to the right. Is that what I do? Is it working? Hit the arrow to the right on the pointer. Okay, I'm not doing something right. Mike's going to help me there as I get used to this thing. Had to be on. That helps, Eric. Turn it on. Now there's some rocket science for you. It has to be on. That's why Mike's here. Anyway, let's try it. There we go. Okay. So, when it comes to sharing our faith and articulating what we believe, there's a passage in 1 Peter 3:15 to 16 that says, "Be ready for a reason to the hope that is within you, yet with gentleness and reverence." So you might be able to point people to the hope that you have. And, there's just a couple pictures here of us at Ohio State. This is us out on the Oval here. Has anybody been to the Oval at Ohio State? Has anybody seen it? It's a large outside area. There's a lot of students walking around there, 60,000 students, and then that's us to the right there with an outreach table. But so we've been on the campus for a long time. We do a lot of events. We do weekly meetings. We do discipleship. We do some apologetic events. Some speakers that come in and give lectures. We do some debates. But, the university is certainly a great place to do outreach. And, I know some of you are saying, well, I'm not on the campus. I don't necessarily hear the objections maybe that you're hearing on the campus, but I can tell you that just anywhere you go today, a lot of the things I'm going to bring up, you're going to see in a lot of areas. It's not just the campus, just a lot of the things we're hearing about the faith and some of the objections you hear. So I'm hoping that as I go through some of these slides and talk about some of these issues that you're able to say, well, you know what, I understand what he's saying, and I do. That kind of does come up in my attempt to share the gospel with others. So now, one other thing I was going to mention, I know Pastor Mike had gone through this book a ways back, I think a few years ago. I Don't Know Faith to Be an Atheist. He went through the workbook and went through the videos. I actually had some extras with me from a recent event because we had Frank Turk at our campus, my friend Frank Turk. He spoke on this book a few weeks ago. So if you have any interest, I have some extras here today. I'm selling them. I can't give them away for free, but come by the table. I have some extras of that book and his newer book if you're interested. But, you know, if some of this stuff is new to you and you say, well, you know, some of this stuff sounds new. I wasn't there to go through Pastor Mike's teaching on that. You know, feel free to pick this up. There's more information here because I know some of this stuff, material may be kind of new to you, and so I encourage you to come by. You don't have to kind of say, well, I have to absorb it all today. You know, there's resources out there. So let's just go through some of these. Now, like I said, I'm going to kind of tie in some of my experiences here on the campus and some of the things I'm hearing. Now, I just want to mention one other thing, that if you're a father or mother, and I see young people in the audience here today, you know, I see some parents, that there is going to come a time, it may be already be happening, where your kids are going to ask you why you believe what you believe, and they're going to have questions. And let me tell you where they're getting their information from: the internet, right? It doesn't take long. You know, you get raised in a Sunday school, or you learn some things about the Bible from your parents, and it doesn't take long before they're on their phone and they're looking at a YouTube clip, or their friend is sending them a link to read or something, and you know, they're going to hear objections to the faith. There's just too much information out there. So we're really at a time in our country and a stage of our existence where you really, really, really got to understand it's important to have answers for your kids. You know, it's really imperative. I can tell you that I have a 9-year-old and a 13-year-old, and I've started them on some of this stuff very early on, and my daughter's just soaking it up right now at age 13. My son started a little bit, but start them young. Do not wait till they're teenagers, and certainly don't wait till they get in college. It's definitely way too late then at that point. So, you know, this is so important that, you know, you start them on some of these things early, because I see the results of students that come to the campus that really had no idea what they believed, why they believed, by the time they got there, and it's just too late, okay? They are hearing objections to the faith on the campus, in the classroom, or from their peers, or on the internet. And they may stick with the faith. I'm not saying there's not Christians on the campus, there is, but some of them, obviously, many of them, many cases, are becoming agnostics or atheists in campus, you know, in that environment. It's just a very secularized environment, and they're hearing a lot of objections, okay? So, that's a picture of Frank. That's one of our events there. I Don't Know Faith to Be an Atheist. That was recently, just a quick picture there. I just want to show you a couple things we do there. All right, and then these are some of the resources you can get. I've got some over here. These are some more resources. You can look at the PowerPoint when I leave. They'll have this video up. But if you get hold of any of these books, they're good starting points if you want to go deeper on the issue, along with this one here. I just wanted to pass this on. These are all excellent resources to start reading for you and your children as well, okay? All right, now let me give you a quick definition here. I defined apologetics a little bit, but I think this is very, very important. How many of us try to get out and actually share the gospel with others, where you try to present the good news of Jesus, where you say, you know, Jesus died and rose from the dead. You know, I want to share with you the message of eternal life. Well, you know, that's important. We need to do that. We're commanded to do that. But, you know, like Tim Keller says here, that a lot of times they're trying to give people our message, and people ask about, you know, the why question, okay? Look what Tim says there. He says, apologetics is an answer to the why question after you've already given people an answer to the what question. The what question, of course, is what is the gospel? But when you call people to believe in the gospel, they ask, why should I believe that? Then you need apologetics. And like I said, there's a lot of people that have why questions, okay? You can open the Bible, you can present the good news, but they may say, well, why should I believe that over another religion? Or why should I believe the Bible? Or why should I accept this as true? And that's just the culture we live in today, okay? Now, skip that slide there. So what I want to do today is kind of go through, I'm going to take some points of Frank's book and kind of tweak them in my way to kind of present them. But There's 4 points of this book that we go through, and one of them, of course, is truth. And I want to spend a little bit of time on truth here because this is so important. You know, I find that one of the most pressing issues of our day is that many, many, many people don't really think about or even care if Christianity is true. Do you know that? You may say, well, that's shocking. Don't you care if it's true? I mean, you want to believe something that's true. I mean, after all, when you look at truth, all of us generally want truth. We want truth in these areas of our lives. We want loved ones to tell us the truth. We want doctors to give us the truth about a diagnosis. We want banks to give us true bank statements. We want courts to give us truth. We want employers, teachers. Have we given up on politicians? Okay. We've given up on that one. I put that one on the bottom, you know, as you see the very last one, because I think all of us have said to ourselves, I'm not sure if we can get any truth in politics anymore. But anyway, the point is that we rely on truth in all areas of our lives, but then when it comes to our faith, sometimes it's like, well, I don't really know if even Christianity is true. I'm not sure if I can find out if it's true. And I don't even know if I can articulate to somebody whether it's true or not. See, it's very interesting. Only when it comes to our faith that we kind of back out and say, well, I'm not sure about the truth question. And that's very, very interesting because I assume that most of us do think Christianity is true. You're not here at Calvary Chapel on a Sunday morning because you're kind of like, well, it's kind of something I just wanted to do today. I mean, you actually think that Jesus rose from the dead and you think that it's true. You know, I assume it matters to you. I don't want to follow something that's not true. I got other things to do with my time. I don't want to invest my time telling others about something that's false, okay? I talk to Muslims sometimes. They think Islam's true. I talk to Mormons. They think that's true. I talk to atheists. They think atheism's true. I actually think that it's really important that we articulate to people that we actually think Christianity is true. You may say to yourself, it's a no-brainer. You'd be surprised. A lot of people don't believe in truth these days. I don't think it's important when it comes to our faith. So, you know, one of the biggest questions you can ask somebody today, whenever you're dealing with somebody that's skeptical about Christianity or they're not sure if they want to follow Jesus and they're skeptical of the gospel, I always ask them, this is one of my pressing questions I say, if Christianity is actually true, would you commit to become a follower of Jesus? That is something you can always ask them. And you will find out very quickly how serious they are about discovering the truth. Very, very good question to ask. It's one of the questions Frank Turek asks. I ask it now. You know, you go through with skepticism with people or agnosticism or something. Just ask them that question. Very important, okay? Now, remember a few things about truth. This is really important. You know, truth is not necessarily something that makes people feel good. You know, you could feel something is good or feels right to you. It could be totally false. That doesn't necessarily make something true. Number 2, truth is not necessarily what the majority of people say is true. That's obvious. 51% of a group can reach a wrong conclusion. Truth is not simply about what is believed. You know, you could believe something and it could be a lie. You know, I hope that, you know, I run into sincere people from other faiths and they say they like I talked about people from different religions, they say they believe it and that makes it true. Well, no. You have to provide evidence for what you believe, right? That's what's, you know, to show that it's true. So simply believing it doesn't make it true, okay? Also, today, one of the most pressing ways people find truth is what is called pragmatism. Now, I'm not sure anyone's familiar with this, but this is the way our countries run. This is the way we run our lives, right? You generally believe something that works for you. You believe it makes a difference in your life. And, you know, that's the way people sometimes discover truth. This is the number one way that actually Josh McDowell says that younger people are discovering truth today is something that works for them. So some people might look at our lives and say, you know, well, I've watched Jesus work in your life. It makes a difference. I want what you got. Maybe I can try Jesus, okay? It makes a difference. Or maybe they'll say, number 3, you know, what can God do for me? What kind of difference can he make in my life? So, you know, there's some validity to this. It's not totally irrelevant. You know, Jesus is supposed to make a difference in our lives, but, you know, just remember that obviously people from other faiths can follow things that might make a difference in their lives. It doesn't necessarily make it true, right? So what we want to realize is that, think about this. Has anybody any chance to ever talk to a Mormon before? Anybody in this room ever witnessed to Mormons? Okay. They're the nicest people I've ever met. They're so kind, and as my pastor said, I'm not good looking enough to be a Mormon. So anyway, some of the male Mormons we have a huge Mormon outreach at Ohio State. I mean, they're all over the campus all day long. They go out in twos, the females, the sisters, and the elders, and they go around and witness to people all day long. But, talking to them over the years, I don't talk to them all the time, but I've had probably 2 or 3 discussions on a yearly basis. But, they're very nice, and I ask them, what makes Mormonism true? And they tell me, well, I had the experience of the burning in the bosom and the spirit, and Mormonism has helped me live a more moral life. That's what they tell me. It helps me have a strong family, and I lead a moral life. Well, I'm going to have to say that that's great, but that doesn't really do anything for me. I mean, I'm a Christian. Hopefully, Jesus helps me live a moral life and everything, but I'm going to need more than that, to go off of. And then, in Islam today, in prisons, sometimes there's a lot of the prisoners that are latching on to it's called Black Islam in the prisons, but they become Muslims in prison. They say it's helping them become more responsible citizens. Well, these things don't make Mormonism true, and it doesn't make Islam true, okay? Just because it makes a difference in your life. You've got to understand that you've got to have some evidence behind the Book of Mormon. You've got to have some evidence behind the Quran that's actually a revelation from God, right? Otherwise, we're going to have everybody running around saying, I've got the true revelation because it makes a difference in my life. That doesn't work. So with us, with Christianity, the one thing that Paul says that is the mark of our faith, that makes our faith true, is, of course, the resurrection of Jesus. He says in 1 Corinthians 15, very clearly, he says, if the dead are not raised, not even Christ has been raised, and if Christ has not been raised, your faith is worthless, you're still dead in your sins. He says right here that faith in Christ rests upon evidence for the resurrection. That's how our faith can be shown to be true or false, okay? So we've got to challenge, people from other religions and other faiths to provide some good reasons or evidence why what they believe is true. Why? So it makes a difference in your life. That's wonderful, but I need some more than that, okay? We need some evidence behind what we believe, all right? And so that, of course, is the core of our faith, the resurrection. Now, when it comes to God's existence, this issue is one of the most pressing questions of our lives, of course. We run into people that say, well, a lot of times, I don't really care if God exists. I'm busy, I've got things to do, I've got a job to take, I've got money to make, I've got to make a living, I've got responsibilities, and God's existence kind of puts on the back burner. Now, at Ohio State, I always challenge students when they say, well, I don't really think it matters if God exists. I always say, well, you know what? I just want to say it like this. I'll go back to the issue. Let me go back here. I'm going to go back a couple slides here. Let me say this. I say this to students all the time, and you can tell people this. If God exists, and if Jesus turns out to be who he is, if that's really true right now at this very moment, it's going to be true tomorrow. And it's going to be true 5 days from now. It's going to be true 10 years from now. It's going to be true six years from now, 100 years from now. So if you want to blow it off and stay busy and you want to just pursue what you're doing, it's not going to get rid of it, okay? It's still going to be true tomorrow, okay? So you can stay busy and do whatever you want, but it's still going to be true tomorrow if it's true. So when it comes to God's existence, we need to challenge people and say to them, God's existence does matter. It does matter in your life. Just because you want to stay busy doesn't make it go away. And of course, when we talk to people, we know that there's barriers to belief. You ever talk to somebody, you know that there's obviously spiritual barriers. Biblically, of course, says people are separated from God. They don't have a relationship with God. With some people, when it comes to God's existence, we deal with emotional barriers. People have been hurt by issues within the church, or sometimes it's issues with God. They're disappointed with God. Then, of course, on a college campus, you deal a lot with intellectual barriers. Those are people that have objections to the faith. They've heard intellectual, skeptical objections. And then there's issues, of course, volitional barriers. That's an issue of their will. They simply will not believe in God, and they will not trust in Jesus, no matter how much evidence is presented. So the issue of God's existence does matter. Now, you probably heard this a lot on a college campus. I hear it all the time. One of the most pressing things that comes up, well, there's no proof for God, there's no evidence for God. It's one of the most common objections you'll ever hear on a college campus, and it's almost like I tell myself if I had a $20 bill every time I've heard it, I wouldn't have to work in it ever again. I'd be retired by now. But, it just comes up all the time. Has anyone ever heard these two? Ever heard these two come up all the time? And, it seems like the skeptic's trump card or an agnostic, way of people who are agnostic. They kind of got us, right? They say that. But you know what I always say to that? I always respond back with questions. Jesus really was great at asking questions with people. Have you ever noticed that? He always was able to take someone where they were at and find out where their heart was and ask the right question back. And that's what we want to do with people. Instead of always giving them an answer, sometimes ask the question back and get them to think through what they're asking. So something that I always ask people, I respond back, I always say to them, how do you define proof or evidence? When you're asking for evidence or proof, how do you define that? What is it that qualifies as evidence? Also, what would convince you that Christianity is true? Or number 3, how should God show you he's even real? What should God do? You know what I mean? If God exists, what should he do? What would convince you that he's real? You would be surprised how many people have never thought through these 3 questions, okay? And it'll get them to think about what they're asking. It's very, very important. Now, the most common objection that I've heard over the last 12 years on a college campus to God's existence, and maybe you've heard this as well, comes up with me a lot, is that, people assume that if God's real and he's all-powerful, he should just hand people this supernatural sign or a miracle of some kind that he's there. He should manifest himself in a way that they can find him. It should be so easy. God should either write it in the sky or manifest himself in front of somebody or do something, So this is the most common objection I've heard. Well, there's some problems with this. Is that they don't know what they're asking for. Because actually, when you read the Bible, if they're talking about the God of the Bible, I don't know if you realize it, but if you look back in Exodus, my slide's a little big here, but, Moses says here to God, he says at one point, he wants God to show him all his glory and goodness. And, we see that at one point, the slide got cut off, that it's Exodus 33, that God tells Moses that he can't see him, right? He can't look upon God directly because he'll actually die, right? And so the God of the Bible really, if you read the Old Testament carefully, it's very clear he can't really reveal himself full on directly to somebody because it's not good for us. We don't want to stand in the presence of an all-consuming God. So what he does is he veils himself in certain ways. Of course, God, Moses could see the backside of God, he shows up in other ways throughout the Old Testament, like the angel of the Lord and other things. But, God is very, very concerned about, the issue of wanting how he can appear to people, right? And he decides how he wants to show himself, okay? And, something that we can show people is something that C.S. Lewis once said. C.S. Lewis is a great author, and he said here very clearly, he said, I believe in Christianity as I believe that the sun has risen, not only because I see it, but because I see everything else. You know what Lewis means by that? Lewis means that when he looks out in reality, he looks out all over everything across the world, reality. He says, my faith helps me see everything. He says, Christianity is a worldview. It helps me understand reality, right? And the features of reality. And so it's like a lens through the way he sees things, okay? So what I do with people is I always ask them I always tell them actually this, is that my faith is an entire worldview. It's a way that I view reality. Worldview is the way you see reality. And my worldview helps me answer these big questions. Now, I can't see God directly, like I'm looking at Pastor Mike right now, and we said that's a good thing biblically. But I can see the world around me, and I can see the features of reality, and I think that God makes better sense of these questions than no God, okay? That he answers these questions, the belief in the existence of a personal God answers this better than no God. Things such as the design of the universe, the origin of the four natural forces, the origin and the order of the law of causality, how the universe came together, the origin of reason and the laws of logic that we use every day, the laws of mathematics. I'm not a mathematician, but there's a lot of mathematicians believe in God from what I understand. The origin of objective morality and human rights, the design and life of consciousness, of new life forms, of intelligence and personality. You know, like I said, we can't see God directly, but these questions, these features of reality are out there, and God makes sense of answering these things, okay? So a lot of times, you know, we present Christianity as just a relationship with Jesus, which it is. It definitely is a relationship with Jesus. We need to understand that this is an entire worldview, okay? And you've got to teach your kids this. You've got to teach them this, because otherwise they're going to think that basically all that Christianity is basically I believe in Jesus and then I die and I go to heaven and that's it, you see? That won't do. That won't work in this world today. You've got to show people Christianity matters, okay? It matters in the big questions, okay? It matters in how to explain reality, explain the worldview questions, okay? Because these are the questions, these worldview questions that your kids are going to hear, just some of them, by the way, they're going to hear on a college campus, and they're going to hear as they grow up, and they need to answer these questions. You need to show them that our worldview answers these questions, okay? Now, oops, going faster. It's stuck on one. Why is it doing that? That's weird. There we go. Okay, I just had to hit it a little faster. Okay, here we go. Now, we probably know that science is one way that a lot of people try to find God. It's very common on a college campus. A lot of people think science is the only way of knowing things. People claim to be very scientific. And, you know, we can answer that objection. It comes up a lot. But, you know, science is a good thing. There's been a lot of Christians that have done some good things in science. They still continue to do them. I've got books on my shelves by people a lot smarter than me, biologists, chemists, physicists, geologists. They do amazing things in the scientific world. And we need to understand that science is a study of the natural and material world. So if that's the case, let me ask you a question. If someone said to you, I want scientific evidence God exists. I want you to prove to me scientifically that God exists. And if this is the definition of science, that it's a study of the natural and material world, is God natural and material? Let me ask you a question. Is God a natural being? Is he all natural? Or is he supernatural? Supernatural, right? Is God a physical being or a material being? Like everything we've seen here is material and physical, like this table. God's not physical, is he? You can't see him directly. Well, if that's the case, then I'm trying to figure out how science is going to prove God's existence or non-existence, okay? So you've got a problem right there. So as I said right here, number one, is God natural or supernatural? Of course, he's not natural. He's supernatural. Is God physical? No. So how would science prove or provide evidence against the non-existence of God? Well, let me say this. It doesn't mean there isn't any scientific evidence for God, because there is. But when someone asks that question, you always want to bring these things up, okay? Get them to define science. One thing that's interesting here is that, you know, when science started, science really started at the beginning of the universe, okay? When the universe came into existence a long time ago, and there was a big beginning point right here, that's when everything came to existence, the entire material world, the physical world, and that's when science had a chance to get going. And that's when before there was no time, space, matter, and then at the beginning point we have time, space, and matter. This is when science really got going right here. And this is why a lot of the first scientists saw that, you know, this is where the laws of nature came to existence, and this is how we start our scientific process. So we need a cause outside that beginning point to bring the universe into existence, right? We need a cause that is outside time, space, and matter. And that cause is interesting, because even right here, these guys who aren't even Christians, they both agree in the scientific realm that the universe had a beginning. Look what this guy up here on the top says, this Russian physicist. He says, with the proof now in place, cosmologists can no longer hide behind the possibility of a past eternal universe. There is now no escape. They have to face the problem of a cosmic beginning. Even Hawking here, Stephen Hawking, the well-known physicist, says, almost everyone now believes the universe in itself had a beginning. So There's not a lot of disagreement here that the universe had a beginning by physicists, even non-Christians. The question is, what caused it? Well, whatever that cause is, it has to be something that's outside nature because it created the natural. It has to be powerful, definitely powerful. It has to be eternal because the universe is obviously not eternal. The universe had a beginning. It has to be timeless and changeless. It has to be non-material because it transcends space and the physical realm. It has to be intelligent. It has to be purposeful because the universe had a purpose. So it just so happens, it's interesting that the cause outside that caused this beginning point, back here, I'll go to this point here, is that whatever cause it was, it sounds a little bit, you get a little bit of the God of the Bible here because the God of the Bible is outside time, he's outside space, and he's eternal, okay? And he's obviously outside nature. So it's just interesting, when they came to believe that the evidence came in the universe had a beginning, that so many people began to say, you know what, that sounds a lot like Genesis. All these years they've been saying in the beginning God created, and a lot of the atheists pushed back. They said, no, I don't like it. It sounds a lot like Genesis. And to this day, you know, the cosmological evidence show the universe has a beginning. And of course, the universe has to have a cause, and that cause has to be outside nature, which points to some sort of intelligent being, okay? Now, something else that's interesting we found out in the sciences is that the universe is also fine-tuned for life, and I'll explain what fine-tuning is here. I'll define it. Some of these books have come out. There's all kinds of books talks about how our planet is privileged. It's set up a certain way. The universe is set up for us to be here. Books such as The Elegant Universe, Why the Universe is the Way It Is. Some of these newer books on the far right, A Fortunate Universe and Probable Planet. You know, the universe is interesting because I just found this article, Washington Post, came out November 25th. It's just, you know, list the last couple weeks here. And there's this article. It says in the Washington Post, not exactly like a conservative newspaper. It says here, the article is called Humanity is Cosmically Special. Cosmically Special, and here's how we know. That's what the article was called. And look what this guy says here. He's a Harvard lecturer. He says, the anthropic principle has been accepted by physicists for 43 years. The universe, far from being a collection of random accidents, appears to be stupendously perfect and fine-tuned for life. The strengths of the four forces that operate in the universe, gravity, electromagnetism, and the strong and weak nuclear interactions, and the latter two dominate only at the level of atoms, for example, have values critically suited for life, and were they even a few % different, we would not be here. How about that? So what that means is that many, many features of the universe are set up a certain way just for us to be here in this building today. And, you know, that means the universe was rigged for life, for us to be here. You can't even get life going on Earth without the universe being set up right for life. And so, you know, the issue is that, you know, a guy like this, look at this guy here. He's not even a Christian, a cosmologist in England. He says, the mathematics requires for human life boils down to 6 numbers. These numbers were built into the Big Bang. He says, you know, that's the beginning of the universe for him. He calls it the Big Bang. Must have precise values they possess for our world to be hospitable to humans. So what that means, if you go back to this beginning point right here, my little diagram here, is that that beginning point of the universe, when these laws of nature came into existence, these features had to be built into the universe at that very beginning point for us to even be here today talking, okay? That means that God planned ahead. There's a mind that planned ahead for us to be here today, to get life going on Earth. Now, I don't know about you, but I think that's pretty impressive that, you know, a guy in the Washington Post says that right there. I don't even know if he's even a Christian. Maybe he's not. But he obviously says the universe is rigged for life. And that means we need to ask ourselves, what is the cause for that? You know, what's the explanation for that? Now, on a college campus, you know what people will say? You know what students will say? We just got lucky. That's the most common objection I hear. Well, we just got lucky. And here's what they'll say. They'll say, well, you know what? There's many universes out there. Maybe there's other universes, and we just got the right one, okay? We got lucky, just like a cosmic jackpot, you know? And that's really interesting. You know, it's too bad because I know that there's a lot of things I observe around me that take a lot of intelligence. Even, I mean, computer programmers, IT people, I'm not an IT guy, but the things the human mind can do in this world that takes so much complexity. But then when it comes to universe that is so impressive, that has to be set up just right, and then people will say we just got lucky. And doesn't that sound a little bit like Romans 1? What does Paul say in Romans chapter 1? It says, God has revealed himself through the invisible attributes, the things that are made, the features that are made in the universe, the features of the created order. Notice he doesn't say people can see God directly, but he does say you can look at the created world in the universe and see the fingerprints of a God or a designer, right? But then he goes on to say people reject that and they suppress the truth in unrighteousness, right? And so that's so true today. And so we want to be impressed with some of the things the sciences are finding, even though, you know, there's some skepticism in the academic community. Still, we need to be impressed with that, okay? So, the universes, multiple universes doesn't really work. Of course, if there are multiple universes, there's no evidence for that yet. We haven't found any other universes, and I still am really kind of concerned about our universe, you know. I want an explanation for this one, all right? So that's what I want to focus on. Okay, now let me press that forward. So you know what the obvious view is? This is a common view out there. This is what a lot of people believe. It's really sad, and I run into this a lot on a college campus. But this is what's taught on college campuses, actually. This is where you came from. This is the view of where humans came from. Says the universe was produced by mindless, non-conscious, non-moral processes. Human beings were produced, I think there's something missing there. Human beings were produced by, well, let's skip that. Let's just say where it says life somehow emerged from non-living matter. All the cosmic constants just happened to be given right and given enough time. A finely tuned world would eventually emerge. So for the skeptical community, everything's just a chance accident. That's why we're here. It's all by chance and randomness. So this is the dominant view that's taught on college campuses. So you wonder why we are where we are, right? Very interesting. And so even a guy like Richard Dawkins, anyone heard of Richard Dawkins? He's a well-known